Hey Student Life, Pastor Pablo here, and I'm so excited to be here with you today and just being able to bring the word. We haven't been able to meet in person for quite a bit of time, but at least I'm getting an opportunity to speak some truth. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to start a new series in the book of Matthew, and we're going to be talking about the BEatitudes. Now, you may be wondering about the BEatitudes. It's a great portion of the Bible that I know I personally love. My wife loves as well, and I know many people find this to be so relatable in our everyday life. And the reason I was thinking of the BEatitudes, this is going to sound completely dumb. However, I was thinking about recently in the news, they're talking about these murder hornets, right? And I'm looking around, and I'm like, we're dealing with things like COVID, and we're dealing with all this other stuff going on, and now all of a sudden we got to worry about dodging some murder hornets, and my mind was like, what is going on? And so it kind of started making me remember about the colony of bees and things of that nature, and I found out that in Japan, where these hornets originated from, actually the bees aren't that worried about them. The bees actually will swarm on these hornets and begin to flap their wings so fast and vibrate them till they heat the hornet up to about 216 degrees, and they literally just fry these hornets. And I thought about a time where I felt like I almost died from I would have swore to you they were murder hornets, right? And so what happened was I was probably I was a freshman in high school, and I was on a football team. I was about this size, and I was on the way home from practice, and I thought I was really cool. We had those really cool, for the time anyways, these jerseys that you would pull over, and they had all the little holes, like a net practice jersey. And as I was walking home from that practice, I was extremely chubby, and I was walking, I was kind of feeling good after a good practice. I was stretching out, and one of my little cousins happened to be walking as well, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And they were playing in the park right next to the school. And as I walked up on them, I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing? I noticed they were throwing rocks into a tree, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, there's a wasp nest up there. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so they're throwing rocks, and I said, hey, guys, you probably shouldn't do that because you're probably going to get hurt. And so what happened was, as they were doing this, me being the kind and just an older cousin who was trying to look out for a younger cousin, I stood there and I was watching them throw rocks. And what happened was, on the park, one of the kids looked down, and they found this handle to a fishing pole. And as they grabbed that handle to the fishing pole, one of them goes, I'm going to knock down that nest. And they took a full handle to a fishing pole, and they chucked it up, and it hit, and when it hit the hornets, it wasn't a hornet's nest, it was a wasp nest. I would have thought they were hornets, but when it hit it, the handle actually went inside of the nest and stood there. It didn't fall, it just stood there. And I was kind of like, wow, that's crazy, right? And what happened was we started seeing some of the wasps come out of the nest, and my cousin's like, oh no. I said, what? He said, I left my jacket. It's right under the nest, and there's wasps there now. And I go, like I was big and bad, I go, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'll get it for you. Don't worry, but I'll get it for you. And so as I went ahead and I began to walk over to that coat, I'm just giving a jog. I don't want these younger, they're probably fifth graders. I don't want them to think that I was afraid. So I kind of did my little stroll over there, little halfway jog. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I reached down, and when I grabbed that coat, all of a sudden I heard I felt and I heard the hairs stood up on the back of my neck, and I had more hair up here. It stood up on my head and my hair, and I felt this buzzing sound like it was indescribable. Just this incredible buzz all of a sudden happened. I started to feel one or two wasps flying around me, but within seconds, as I snatched that coat, all of the wasps came falling out of that nest, and I heard them all over me. They were buzzing. I started running, and I was running so fast. Okay, it really wasn't that fast because, okay, right? But I was running as fast as I thought I was running, and I was trying to get away, and these things were inside of that netted jersey, unable to escape, and they were stinging me over and over, and I began to take my shirt off. What a sight to see, right? And run and kind of smack myself to knock these wasps out. And I ran about a couple of blocks home, that's where I lived, and I just remember being in a crazy panic. I remember being so nervous about what was going to happen to me because I was full of these stings, and I went to go home, and my mom wasn't home. My mom wasn't home. My grandma lived next door. They weren't home. For some reason, it was crazy for nobody to be home. They weren't home. And so I did the only thing I knew to do. I went ahead and I walked over because I just live right down the block. Now, I kept my cousin with me because he was on a bike, and I said, you know what? Stay with me because I've been watching some movies where they get stung by the bees and then somebody passes away. So I didn't want that to be my life story because it would be dumb, right? And so I went ahead and I said, stay with me. And I went to the local police station, and they called an ambulance to check me out to make sure that I was okay. And they were like, do you have any allergies? I'm like, no. And I'm like, they're like, then why are you here, bro? Man up and stop whining about some wasp things. And I thought I saw my life flash before my eyes. And so I'm going to tell you what, if I see a murder hornet come around, I'm going to run like crazy. But that being said, when I was looking into those stories, and so insects have always really just fascinated me by what they can do, but I was thinking about a colony of bees, because the real threat is not that a murder hornet's going to get us. It's that they could potentially attack colonies of bees, and we know that those colonies, they pollinate all of our flowers, and that's what helps our farming and things of that nature. It makes our landscaping, it makes all those flowers look beautiful. Is actually bees are a large part of that. And so as I looked into there's some cool things about bees. One of the best things about bees is that they are the only insect that produces something that us humans eat. And that is absolutely amazing because I love honey. I love honey on everything. I love honey on my chicken. I love honey on my in my tea. I love honey. I can just take a spoonful of honey and eat it. I love it, right? And so I thought about this, and there's something interesting about the bee. The bee knows exactly what the bee is supposed to do. Even in this situation, you can check it out on YouTube. When the murder hornet was placed by the hive, they all immediately, instinctually knew what to do. And sometimes as people and as humans, we try to jump into things before we know what we're getting into. We put our foot forward and try to be a part of something before we knew what we were getting into, because we see the big picture, we see what we want, like, yeah, I want that house, yeah, I want that car, yeah, I want to date that person, but we don't look around and see what does it take to actually make that thing happen. And like for me, when I was in high school, my sophomore year, I decided I wanted to lose weight. I saw a buddy of mine, he joined a wrestling team, he lost a bunch of weight, he looked pretty in shape, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to lose some weight. So I went ahead, signed my name up on the wrestling, for the wrestling team, and it was the biggest awakening I ever had. I had no idea what I was getting myself up into. The practices were killer, and then even after the practices were killer, getting thrown around like crazy, and then not realizing that your meets were actually on Saturdays, and that was horrible in itself, but then realizing that you had to be at the school between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning to wrestle all day and to get home at 7 o'clock at night. I didn't know what I was getting into. I saw the prize, but I didn't see what had to be put into it to make that happen. And so I think that when we want to be a Christian or a follower of Christ, it's a good idea for us to look a little deeper. It's a good idea for us to not walk blindly, but to really think about what steps we're taking. And if you call yourself, or you would say you want to be part of the family of Christ, I think that we should know a little bit more about what that needs. And Jesus does this with the Sermon on the Mount that we find in Matthew chapter 5. He does it in this sermon. And this sermon takes place as a large crowd of people. Jesus had basically just begun his preaching ministry and doing the things that he was doing. The first disciples had been called. And so this crowd was making its way towards him. And I believe that he was making an appeal to the crowd as to why it's better to follow him and to be part of God's kingdom than to live how they were currently living. And Jesus shares with them what people who would follow him would be like, what they might look like, and how they might act in certain situations. And we have this thing called the BEatitudes. Now, the word, that's a Latin word for blessed, right? That's what it means. That's where we get that word for Beatitudes. Actually, beatus is what the word is, but it's a Latin word for blessed, in which it comes out to in that form of the Beatitudes. And so when I think of it this way, I feel like Jesus was inviting them to be part of his family and to enjoy all the benefits of being part of the family of God. And what he was saying to them was this. He was giving them the recipe for a blessed life. In other words, he says, I'm going to give your life meaning, and you will be blessed because your life has meaning. And then he begins to list the attitudes that people might exhibit. And here, I'm going to read to you what that was, all right? And I'm going to read quickly, all right? Here it goes. Matthew 5, it says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. And blessed are those who suffer persecution for justice' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, I want to break that down. I want to break these Beatitudes down just a little bit so we can hear and understand it a little bit better. And we're going to do this over the next couple of weeks, next few weeks, actually. And today we're going to talk about, I'm going to break them down to three, and I'll share them with you. I'll give you the secret. We're going to have the he attitudes, right? The me attitudes and the we attitudes. And today we're going to hit the he attitudes. And here's what it means. It means that our attitude should be a certain way because of who he is, what he has done, and what he will do. When I say he, I'm talking about Jesus. Our attitude should be a certain way because of who he is, what he has done, and what he will do in our life. And you might ask yourself the question, well, what has Christ done for me? What has he done in my life? Well, I like to think about it this way. There's a prophecy in Isaiah that goes like this. It says, the Spirit of the Lord, of Sovereign Lord, is on me because the Lord has anointed me, has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom to the captives, and to release from darkness those who are prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of the vengeance of our God, and to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, and the oil of gladness instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. And that's found in Isaiah 61. Now think about this. I believe that what he has done is Christ has provided a way for us to be set free. And not free from anything, but free from death. Free from sin, free from shame, all these things that we once were, he has provided a way for us to live free and also to live blessed. That beatitude, that lifestyle, he has provided for us a way to live blessed. And as we jump back to what we found in the Beatitudes, it lists all those things. Blessed are over and over. And I'm going to hit a couple of them today that really speak to the he attitudes. And first one is this. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And the second goes like this. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. And people might think this has to do with about being broke and humble, right? We're like, you know what? I get it, Pastor Pablo. We should be broke and we should be humble, and the Lord's going to bless us. As long as we stay broke and as long as we stay humble, he's going to bless us and take care of us. But that's not what the word's saying. That has nothing to do with the word, what he's saying, because in fact, God does not want to operate in us out of poverty. We may be walking through poverty, but he always wants to bring us up out of that. And so he's not saying that we're to be poor. He's not saying that we should be just be humble. That's not the case at all. I want you to remember that these attitudes that we should have are because of who he is, and he is not poor in spirit. But he's saying poor of spirit, it's not about money or happiness. It's coming to the realization that you are nothing without God, that we are all spiritually bankrupt apart from God, and apart from God, we all deserve death. And not only that, it's about making sure that we stay that way no matter what, realizing that apart from God, we are doomed. There's nothing that we have. We are stuck. We are caught. We will be destroyed without God. And being poor in spirit helps us to understand this, that we need to rely fully on God. The second one is this. It says, blessed are those who mourn. It's not about being humble. It's not about whining or complaining. Blessed are those who are like, I'm so low and God's so high. I'm so this and this is how I am. But God, thank you that you're so good and I'm so horrible. It has nothing to do with that. I believe that it's what happened. It's what happens to those when hearing God's standards, when they express regret and actually have repentance for their action. right? It's that moment when you begin to share the good news of Jesus Christ, when we begin to answer the call of God, because even what he said there in Isaiah, that's something that we're supposed to pick up and walk, and we'll talk to that in other weeks. But when we hear who we are compared to God, when we hear who we are compared to what Jesus has done for us and the work that he's provided for us, that we should experience a regret for where we have been, but not that we should stay there, but that we should call out to God that he would restore us, that he would let us live right in our ways and be restored to right action. That's what it means. When he's saying these things, he's saying, blessed are those who realize they're nothing without God, and blessed are those who actually take the time to not just say I'm nothing without God, but to reach out to God and experience his fullness, his complete and utter fullness. Now, this might seem crazy, but look at what God has to offer in exchange for our attitude. If you're poor in spirit, right? If you're nothing without God, he's wanting to make an exchange with you. And this is why it's a good thing. Christ is saying, here's what it is, and here's what I'm going to do. But because of what he's done, if you are poor in spirit, your inheritance is the kingdom of heaven. You can't beat that. You're poor in spirit, but your inheritance is heavy and is huge in the kingdom of God. The second thing is this: to those who mourn, he's going to bring comfort in knowing that they have salvation. I'll say it one more time. Comfort, knowing that they're in salvation. You may realize that you're apart from God. You may realize you need to call out to God, but he's going to offer you comfort that you have salvation in Jesus. See, God places these same options before us and our attitudes. He places it before us and the people as he preached that Sermon on the Mount. He gave them these choices. He's talking to them. He's laying it out there and he's saying, how will you be? How will you react? If you're part of the kingdom of God, or whether you're far from God, or whether you're close to him and you call yourself a Christian, your actual behavior determines if you are actually part of his family. I'm not saying it's to be saved or to go to heaven. I'm saying to be a viable, working family of God, because you may have a bee, but when bees may go and do the work that they need to do, but they always return to the hive. And although we may be separated at this point in time because of this COVID and this stuff going on in these crazy times, I'm going to tell you something. You're not out to be separated, to be alone. You've been set out and you've been put apart to begin to do the work of the God where you are, to be doing the work of the cross in your homes, in your own makeshift studios, as you make your TikToks, as you make your Instagram stories. God is calling you to go ahead and begin to bear fruit in different ways that we've never seen before. And he's saying this, he's given you these options today. Will you adjust your attitude? Will you begin to think a little bit differently in these two areas and ask yourself the question, have I forgotten to fully rely on God? Have I forgotten to fully rely on God? Have I lost conviction in my life? Right? Have I been able to realize this? Or the second part is this: have I been able to release condemnation? Because I think that point, and I'm going to close right here, that point that says those who mourn, it has nothing to do, and there's so many Christians who struggle with this. You've heard, you realize you're far from God, you realize that you aren't doing what you need to do, however, you get stuck in it and you can't move forward. Well, I'm always messing up, well, I'm always causing shame, well, I'm always embarrassing my family, I'm going to give up, I can't do this anymore, I'm just here, God, yes, you are good, but I'm worthless. You know what? Part of what God is wanting to do in your BEatitudes and those who mourn is this: he wants to restore you, and he wants you to realize that there's comfort in knowing who Christ is for your life. We have to release condemnation. And today I want you to realize that you can make a choice and you can make a decision to be in the family of God. Now, this week we'll be releasing different things that we want you to look into on our Instagram and on our YouTube, and practical ways for you to strengthen yourself and be part of the family of God. Because the enemy's trying to seek us, is trying to destroy us. The things this world would want to trip you up: depression, heartache. I know a lot of people are dealing with that right now. But as a family of people who are being like Christ, we need to sometimes swarm together and come to home base and get the strength that we need together to fight off every attack of the enemy. I hope this message has blessed you today, and follow up on social media, subscribe, do all the things that you know how to do. You guys know more than I, and God bless you guys today. Student Life, I hope that sermon meant something to you. Now, For more information on how you can continue to be a great Christ follower and put those BEatitudes into practice, make sure that you're checking out our link tree and all of the content that we'll be dropping. We love you so much, and see you next week.
Surfing, no waves. I do it for the kids.
All for the youngest.
Young man, always surfing, no waves. I do it for the kids.
They wanna know.
They wanna know
Who I do it for.
who I do it for.
I do it all. I do it all. I do it for the kids.
They wanna know
They wanna know
who I do it for.
who I do it for.
I do it all.